Good afternoon. Hello. Welcome to the third Rebel Power Hour. How are you doing today, Martin?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. I've led in the note takers. Hi, Sonia. Great to see you.
Hello, to see you too.
Okay. We will give it a couple of minutes and then we will dive in. It's nice to see the Memrise team represented here.
Yeah, going
Power
strong.
users of Rebel.
I don't consider myself yet a power user, but I'm trying to learn.
Well, hopefully after today, you might get a few hints and tricks to take your Rebel use to the next level. Out of interest, have you looked back at any of the past Power Hours to see any of the use cases?
No, but I know what they are.
That's the main thing.
That's a start.
It's definitely a start. Definitely a start. There was an interesting one last week. Martin, you might enjoy this one. Melisanthi did one around customer experience,
Oh, cool.
user experience, not customer experience, sorry, user experience. So feedback loops, interviews, and that side of things. So you might find that really
Oh,
interesting.
cool. Yeah, I mean that's partly why I've joined in person because I did look at the ones from the past and I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm never going to watch them. And getting Rebel to summarize it for me felt like the wrong use of Rebel.
Well, it's a good use case for Rebel, though, to summarize something. But anyway, hi, Casey. Thanks for joining us today. So it is 2 minutes past the hour. I'm going to hand over to our host for today, Mr. Harry Siggins. So Harry is a AI consultant that works with customers to help them improve their performance and operations, and is a Power Rebel user, that's for sure, and a Power Claude user as well. So over to Harry.
Yeah, thanks, Penny. So today's session is going to be the use case is going to be around project management. So what we're going to see here is really how we can use Rebel to kind of make project management a little bit easier to focus in on how we take one large project across many people, across an entire team, and then be able to use Rebel to gather a lot more of the context that we need and kind of in all honesty, do a lot of the stuff that we don't want to be doing when it comes to project management and have Rebel do that for us so that we can focus on more things around actually setting the context for everyone, making sure teams are aligned and have that all set up. So we're going to be using Rebel in conjunction with Linear. So Linear is a project management tool. It's very popular with like product and engineering teams, but there's more teams that are using it elsewhere now across different functions. Also got a great API and an MCP, which means that when it comes to using it with Rebel, it works very well. Although the same principles that we use today on this could be used with any other project management tool that has some sort of connection into Rebel. So Asana, Monday.com, all of those will apply the same principles there. But then we're also going to see how Rebel can help with the other side of project management, which is not just using project management tools for us, it's actually then communicating it. That's probably the toughest part of project management is making sure everyone is aligned on what's going on, what's not working well, and making sure that we have the established communication patterns across all of our projects. I don't know about you, but when I am on like six different projects in one company, and there's six different managers that do things differently, it can get very chaotic. So we'll see how Rebel can kind of help create some uniformity in at least baseline expectations around how you can manage a project and then how you can communicate updates from there. There'll be two like pretty quick use cases. I say quick, I shouldn't have because there'll probably be whenever you're doing a demo, there's always going to be some sort of hiccup. But we'll walk through it first in helping. I'll set the context for now, which is that you can assume that maybe I'm a new joiner to the team, and I'm asked to help actually onboard a client to Rebel. And so we're going to see can Rebel actually helped me as someone who doesn't have the full context of what even Rebel is, who Mindstone is, and see if we can actually set up a project that follows the customs that have been set by Penny and the team, for example, and then be able to set up the communication channels for that project. So as I go through this, feel free to drop questions in the chat or come off mute. We'll keep this kind of open, but we'll definitely have time towards the end as well. So plenty of time for that. But I'll share my screen to get started here. So I'll keep a few screens open because I'll jump around them, but we've got the first one here, which is Rebel. And what we're also going to see with this is that one of the main things to think about with this is to keep in mind that Rebel has access to more, I'd say, context and memory than what I would be able to see, or that more context and memory than what I can just give it to it. So if you're using, for example, something like a Claude project or even Claude Code and you have some files and such, you may miss out on context that the rest of the company has. And so for someone who is like me, then maybe new to the team and trying to understand the best practices of how we do certain things at the company, it can take quite a while for me to like understand that. But Rebel actually makes that really easily because Rebel has access to not only context and files that live in my own Rebel system, but because I'm connected into the rest of the company as well, I can leverage the things that, for example, Penny and the team have been working on for years to help gather that context for things like this. So just to kick things off, we'll set the context and say that, let's say we've got a new customer who wants to be using Rebel, and I want to make sure that we have the right onboarding project set for that project. Onboarding someone to Rebel is actually, we have an extensive process of onboarding, training, feedback, and all of this. So I don't want to just set up 5 tasks and be done with it. I want to actually understand what the process is. So what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to copy over a prompt that I've set up, and I'll drop it in here, and we'll kind of walk through it just to give some background on it. So in this prompt, basically I've asked for it to create a new linear project for onboarding our new customer, Quantive, which is, funnily enough, the company that it's not real. It's just my made up company, or actually my old company that I worked with, made up Rebel company for now. And I've given it some context, right? So who they are, what success looks like, assume when it would kick off. And I've asked for 2 specific things for it to do. And this is where we get into the side of where it can start to use sub-agents to do multiple tasks at once. It can gather context around things that I don't personally have in my Rebel knowledge base per se, by looking at not only the company memory to understand who is on the Mindstone team and their roles. So, we have Penny, we have Liam, we have Josh, we have all these people, and I need to understand their roles to better understand who can actually help me with this project. We want to see how we've actually structured these onboarding projects in the past, and then what is our standard onboarding process for Rebel if we have one. And then I'd like it to come back with a complete project structure, including name, description, goals, and such. And then I'll send that off. And most importantly is that I haven't asked it to do it end to end just yet. So as it does this, the one thing I've added at the end is once I approve the project structure, so it's going to come back with that project structure, we'll then actually work with getting into linear. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of chunking up the work here to make sure that we're not having it just complete the project overall, create it in linear and be done with it, because there's obviously some context that maybe I haven't shared that I need to go through it. So as you can see here, we've gone through a number of files to understand the team and the past onboarding projects in Rebel. It's gone through a lot of different files there, and then now it's looking to create that. Now it has jumped ahead and decided to create some tasks, but we'll see what it comes back with initially. So as you can see, it's kind of bringing back what that project could look like in linear for us. And then we can see what we can do about approving it from there. And if I scroll back to the top, you'll start to see that it has, based on its research, it's found Rebel Onboarding's team structure, which is these people. It's got customer success lead, which is Penny. The standard operating model, which we've outlined as a 3-session VIP approach, and then timeline path and things like that. And so it's created this sort of structure for us based on what has existed in the company knowledge, which one for me makes it really easy. Two, for someone like Penny, who probably manages this process and keeps things coordinated across all projects, is that there is some consistent basis that Rebel can rely on from its knowledge to then apply for future projects. So it's almost like having administrative control of how we do things at Rebel and making sure things are consistent. So you can see that it's going to have a project here in the linear workspace, which would be Quantib Rebel onboarding. We've got priority, we've got status, we've got some dates, and then it's going to add in this description. And this is one of the interesting things is that why I like using Rebel for something like this is that it actually, and this is very similar to the first office hours, if you joined for that, for the go to market or sales side, was that it actually helps me use these tools as they were supposed to be used. So, for example, I don't know how many people actually write in description fields in their tasks or projects. We just kind of throw them in there and hope people have the context. What Rebel does, it takes the heavy work of adding this full detailed description into the linear project, which we'll see, which would take some time and probably doesn't have a lot of return for you as a project manager up front, but for everyone else on the team, it's fully contextualized there. And you'll start to see like phase one, it has all these tasks. Just because of the size of my screen, it looks a little funky in the formatting, but we'll skip over that. But it has all the tasks that we would outline, and these are based on, again, that memory of how these sort of templatized projects would work. The great thing is you might question like, oh, wouldn't you just have like a linear template that you could just, initiate in linear? Well, the thing is with Rebel that I could actually change this up if I wanted to. So if I wanted to compress the timeline down and say, actually, no, I know this takes 4 weeks, but we actually want to make it 2 weeks. I could just tell Rebel to adapt it that way, and it would understand the tasks formatted in that way, rather than me being constrained to working with a linear template and having to kind of figure that out myself. So this allows for flexibility within some sort of constrained starting point. And it even goes into things like what labels to use and all of this. And this is really key here. So it has like key differences from the standard onboarding. So this is where it may have called out some things and what it found to basically understand like what it should look for differently and suggested assignees based on the role. Maybe I'm new to the team. I actually don't know most of these people. It can help me understand who could help with certain items as well. So it does have questions before we proceed. I'll go ahead and skip this over, but you could basically, again, kind of customize this over again. And it looks like it actually has created the project, which I asked it not to, but Revel likes to, I think it got too eager there. But it has created the project itself. So what we can do is we can actually go to linear here. And let me just refresh this and we should be able to see it here. We can maybe see it. Yeah, so we've got the Quantib Rebel onboarding project here, which is the exact same one. We've got the same customer details that we had before, the onboarding goals, key workflows to build, all of this. This was all determined by that. We've also got some of the more administrative stuff out of the way, like the start date and the end date for what we wanted. And then most importantly, we've got, it looks like it's laid out issues already, which it looks like it may have created. We'll see if that is actually created in the right project here. This is one of the things about being, this is with any AI tool, you kind of have to be very sturdy with making sure that it follows your steps exactly. But we can see that it's created the first few set of tasks. We'll figure out where those are in a second, and then outline the rest of this here. So I'll just say, can you make sure those tasks are actually in the project?
I think I might know where the tasks are because I update a process the other day that said that we're just using the Fox project for issues. So there would be the Fox project board. So sorry if your demo is now impacted.
All good. So basically to Penny's, actually that helps with the skill that's maybe applied into Revel. Penny, as the master project manager for all things customers, has basically made sure that all issues get put in a certain place for us. That's a very custom way of us working here. So this wouldn't necessarily happen if you tried this out for yourself. We just have a sort of behind the scenes rule that is pushing issues elsewhere. But the same, what we can do is we actually see, I can search for that and we can see what it would look like. So actually seeing it, it's pushing those back to the project now. So we should see them flow through as you see here. And we can start to see that if we click into some of these have things that people would skip over, things, context that when we create a task, no one ever really puts that much detail into these descriptions. And if we wanted to go even further, we didn't do that here, but we could also have it set the assignment. We could have it set the estimate of the size, the labeling, things like that. So just as a starting point for it to even get to this point here, I think is a very helpful step in just understanding that it can interact with the tools exactly how you would expect based on memory that you may not even have that it can bring in from others, and then even go further into assigning dependencies and assignments of tasks and things like that. Because we know that it has gone through a process of understanding who could be assigned to these. I didn't necessarily explicitly say, let's assign these out to those people. So that's kind of like how I typically work with these tools is if you're solo and you work by yourself, you may not need a project management tool because Rebel can handle that in its own memory to understand what you're doing. But for if I'm working on a project with Penny, it makes it really easy for me to take even a new call transcript and drop it to a chat with Rebel and say, hey, can you take this call transcript and extract all these tasks and add them into the right projects that we have in Linear? It can even update the tasks and status of what's happened based on maybe we have tasks that are set for clients who need to do tasks for us, and we hear about that on a transcript. It can take care of that as well, or it can also flag things as different priorities based on those as well. So as we interact with these customers on the onboarding, we're spending less time on the project management side of things. We're actually spending more time with the customers, helping them engage with Rebel. So any questions on kind of interact? That's one example of using both a company memory that's elsewhere from my stack that's available to me, plus using Rebel to be the connection to another tool for this example being project management. Are there any questions or things that are coming to mind for people here?
This might be a bit of a newbie question, but I think this was wonderfully when you make a change in Linear now. So Rebel has given Linear the tasks, and you might maybe making changes into the tasks. Suppose that's saved on Linear. Does that communicate back to Rebel? So all of this information that appears here in Rebel on the screen that transfers to Linear, does that continue back and forth updating? Again, this might be very basic, but
No, it's a fantastic question. Yeah. So your question is, if we were to go in here and say, for example, let's move this due date to tomorrow, let's move this to in 1 week, and even put this in progress, right? Does Rebel know about that change? Off the bat, no. However, when you do engage with Rebel, and this is maybe something that helps with prompting anyway, in most cases, like if you made let's say you're in a coding environment and you made changes to your landing page, like your coding agent wouldn't necessarily see that change, but usually the best practice would be first get the context of where we're at. So it can first scan the project and the tasks. So one of the things that we'll kind of get to next is like how we communicate these updates and changes to a Linear project. It would have its context from the past. It doesn't necessarily store that, but it would be able to see, okay, I did this before. Now it looks like this. That is a difference in there. So it's not as tactical as it knows the changes and that gets logged anywhere. But it's very much like asking Rebel to kind of see, hey, what's the current context of things? So when you're thinking about using Rebel, you could actually create, if we're creating this onboarding project or maybe thinking about a mid-project update that we want to do, having it go through a skill that Rebel can do where that skill instructs it first before it does anything else, kind of just see the lay of the land. That is how you could get that first interaction there. So,
cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other questions on that so far? Okay. What I'll do next is I'll show like the next step of this, which would be, well, maybe I want to communicate this out to the team. So what I'll do is a lot of teams use Slack, for example, to help communicate with different projects. We use it at Mindstone to talk about feedback. We have Slack channels with external clients, things like this. And so you can actually see that one of the tasks here is to create a Slack channel called External, Quantive, and Mindstone. So I'm actually going to have Rebel create that for me. It's going to invite Penny to it. And then I also want it to basically send an initial project kickoff message, something that just allows the team to kind of see where we're at, what the tasks are. And it could be a message that I just instantly pin in Slack, so it'll always be there. So what I'll say is, let's take care of Reb 134. Please create the channel and just invite Penny for now. Also, add in a TLDR kickoff message to give everyone context. There we go. So what this is going to do is it's now similar to using the MCP with Linear. We're now going to use another MCP to Slack. And so what it's going to be able to do is be able to create a channel in Slack. It's going to then add Penny to that, and it's going to send the message. Now, in between all those steps, it's using a lot of different tools that are available to Rebel. So for example, being able to actually go through Slack and be able to make the change. It's going to actually find out who this Penny is. We know Penny, but Rebel has to go find Penny in our Slack, and then actually be able to create the message. But all that can be done here for this. So we'll end up seeing that in Slack as well. But Sonia, to your question of how we could keep this in the loop there, having this sort of Slack channel, if it posts updates in the Slack channel over time, you could actually give it that same context over time. So you could actually have it scan the Slack channel for updates that maybe don't show there. So I'm going to allow that. Oh, that was the wrong one. Okay, so it was asking for linear permission. It did say the channel was created, so we'll see if that was there. So we can look at, oh, here we go. So we've got the external quantive Mindstone. We've got Notion AI. I think that's an automation. We've got Penny in the channel as well. And we've also got this message, which is giving the full context of the project. So quick context, timeline, key milestones, and things like that. I could change this up. It's already linked the Linear app as well. We could, for example, have a structure for how these messages get kicked off. And I can easily just, I actually keep forgetting where this is done in, pin to channel. So I could pin this at the top of the channel. So everyone who gets added, this is the first message that they see in there. And so I can keep this going over time as well. So this is just one way of doing this. One thing I could do is I could run something every day that is less of a introductory one and simply runs every day, where it will come back to here, take a look at all the Slack messages that we have in that channel and compare notes. So it's like if we're having all these deep, great discussions in Slack about what amazing work has been done, but then we find out that it's actually either not related to the tasks we should have been doing in Linear or is not reflected in Linear, Rebel can actually scan that and make sure that Linear is up to date, change priority, or vice versa, show things that are overdue and bring that back to Slack as well. So it's almost like Rebel becomes the administrative side of project management, where if you are traditionally a project manager, you can be a bit more strategic and spend your time focusing on, unblocking certain items here or bringing the right team members into the program as well. Any questions on that process, Sonia?
Just to play it back, so
Yeah.
Rebel would actually update the status if it identifies that the task has been done or if it is overdue, and update the other system, Linear.
Yeah.
We don't use Linear. I'm thinking Asana, for instance, which is our case.
Yeah. So you could
Okay.
ask it like every. Now I'll touch on how you could potentially automate that process, but you would have
Yeah.
to initiate that process. Say, Rebel, can you just find the differences between what we're talking about in Slack or Slack, and see if that's reflected in Asana? Are there any things in Asana that we're not talking about in Slack that we need to? And almost be like create the agenda for every project management meeting we have. You could have Rebel do that. Now, the cool thing is that is possible by me just going into Rebel every morning and chatting with it. And if you're using something like Claude Code or something that's more standalone where you have to be the conductor of the messaging, that would be the case. However, we do actually have in Rebel, we have automations as well. Now, I won't go too deep into that right now because this would be a sort of a very much power user side of things. But what you can do is actually have it automate that process for you. So you could set up an automation where instead of, for example, this, I'll zoom in a little, this daily briefing refresh or any of these things here, we could actually tell Rebel to use this automation skill, which gets pulled in whenever you create it, to actually do that exact process that we want about updating or keeping Slack and Linear up to date together and making sure that every morning it's going to post a note in Slack that says, these are the outstanding tasks today. These are the things that need movement. These are the things that were completed. And based on the Slack conversations, here's some suggestions that we should bring in. So you can actually set that up to be a daily process if you wanted to. So instead of you managing it, Sonia, every single time, you can actually have Rebel be, automate that process for you. So,
sorry, Harry, just before we move on to this,
yeah,
I was wondering if Rebel can do the opposite way. So, for example, if we write some stuff to Asana, have it look in Asana and then post to Slack.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's I'd say if you came into Asana or Linear in this example, and let's say the timelines get compressed, right? Client comes back, we're actually not moving from March 31st, we're moving to March 7th, right? That would compress things, and maybe you decide we're going to delete some of these tasks in here, and we're just going to skip over them. One, you could have Rebel actually determine that for you, or you could have Rebel kind of review some of the changes that you've made or review the latest status of things, and then be able to process that into Slack as an update message like, hey, we're compressing these, we've removed these and such, and go from there. So it can definitely be, you can kind of think of Rebel like your communication channel, your project management tool. It's not necessarily like a linear process or connection between the three. It's much more of just like this triangle that's interconnected. And they can all interact in whatever way, but Rebel is the orchestrator of any of the movement. So you can almost imagine anything that you would do within, maybe it's change something in Asana, then message the team, or you talk about something in Slack and you want to bring it to Asana. Rebel can do that on your behalf, essentially, if that makes sense. So.
Yeah, got it. And so if we were to turn this triangle into a square and say, and add in an extra source, which is say our analytics system, where I'm thinking of a particular use case that I'm trying to set Rebel up for, which is it's only memorized people here, right? Like I'm not going to hijack the agenda by.
You're good. Share your example, Martin.
So one of the things I use Rebel for daily is to look up in our analytics system what our revenue was for the previous day and post that to Slack. And that just saves me a ton of faffing about between CSVs. And I love it dearly for that. But the sort of next step I wanted to do was I tried it to like propose, based on the analysis it can do from the analytics, propose some experiments that we could run that day in order to improve revenue the next day. And I think I shared with it enough context that the experiments that it was proposing were like relatively on point, like they weren't sort of completely nuts. And I was trying to, and I got this far as well, where it would post to Slack the update with the numbers, including a bunch of experiments and including links to create that experiment in Asana if we decided to run it. And I sort of managed to do that, get that far. And then the next step I wanted to do, and I sort of tested this in a sandpit rather than with the whole team, but where I would write sort of tasks or like write comments in the Asana card and have Rebel um, post a summary of that, like, experiment concluded, here's the write-up, and that gets posted to Slack as well. Where I've stopped, not because I've run into a technical hurdle, but just I've run out of time to do it at the moment, is if I like drag a card in Asana, like in a project management tool, from doing to done, for that to trigger a workflow, which is like, okay, Rebel, this task is now done. You know when this task was created and when it was concluded. Find me the data for that experiment and add it to the card. Does that
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so instead of going to Rebel to show that something updated, uh, it would trigger sort of that Rebel interaction based on that movement. Is that what you're
Yeah,
looking for?
so basically at this point, Rebel would be in listening mode, see that a project
Hmm.
in Asana has moved from doing to done. And presumably at that point, it would have in its context when that project was created and when it was finished.
Hmm.
And then it would be able to look up in our analytics in Metabase uh, what the KPIs for that experiment were, that it also said itself. Funny.
Yeah. I think a potential, instead of thinking about it on triggering on the exact movement, one starting point could be if you're doing a set of experiments per day, then you could actually maybe set up an automation that runs, every day, or you know, maybe even every hour if you wanted to, where uh, it could scan through the latest comments that are made for the day on the tasks in that Asana board, and then be able to do it all at once, if that makes sense. So it's
Okay,
sort
so
of,
rather than listen for an event, to look for them at a particular time.
yeah, because we do have, for example, like this when transcript arrives, and that would arrive, I believe it arrives in our company context because we just have transcripts push into our Google Drive, and I think we have it then listen to that sense. I don't know about listening to specific tools in that level of detail, like you would for if you were setting up Zapier or something like that. But having this run on a regular schedule just to see what the latest comments are on your particular board, you could set up a skill that is very direct at go to this project and search for uh, within this project any comments from me in the last 24 hours based on this, and then based on those new comments follow these instructions for it. So you're almost setting up a skill that would run on an automated setting to be able to take care of that. So it's not as trigger based for that. It's more chronologically based, if that makes sense. I would say that's
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
starting point to test it out. So
Okay, and you think that it would be able to it, then based on that, it just running that workflow, seeing that a task has been marked as done, and then searching for the corresponding data for that.
yeah, I'd say if you structure the skill well enough that if you were to hand it over to a teammate to do it and they could follow that exact process, um, then Rebel would be able to do it. So, for example, like I've gone to, I think Penny and I were working on a skill for, of all the messages we have in our Slack channel was like, hey, are there any new conversations in the last day, even in threads of conversations? What do we need to know about to potentially create linear tasks for the team? So it can get into quite a deep level of metadata depending on the tool that you're working with. So I'd say like the one limitation might be, I assume Asana is built in a way that it has enough metadata to understand like created date, updated date, things like that that help differentiate it from just all the tasks in there. So that's one thing to look at is if there's specific metadata within the Asana
Yeah, okay, I see what you
data
mean.
infrastructure
Yeah.
side. But it definitely should be able to do it as long as you've then outlined, okay, when you do see this information of here's the latest comments, here's what to do with each of them. And you go through the instructions of how many loops. We've been talking shapes of triangles, squares. You could make a octagon of tools if you wanted to
Oh my
with the way
gosh, an
Rebel can work.
octagon.
Yeah, so you can get crazy with it if you want to. But I'd say that's a good starting point to see if you can loop that in. So
Cool, thank you.
yeah,
I'll try and report next week how I go on.
yeah, definitely give it a go. Well, that's it for the use cases overall. So we'll use the rest of the time. I think we've got like 10 minutes, I think, for any open-ended Q&A on anything I showed here. We can even try something out if you want. Uh, but yeah, the time is now yours to ask any questions about Rebel itself, or in these use cases in particular. I'll stop sharing just for now, but happy to reshare if needed as well. So
Mm, mm, mm. Eh, Spaces. I've got questions about the spaces. Would you
sure.
create a space if you were creating a project, like for instance, this onboarding project? Would you create a bespoke space for that, or would you just go into the general? I mean, the spaces that you currently have, which are by default the chief of staff. I think that's it. That is
Yeah,
called
yeah,
work and rebel, right? But I've been trying to familiarize. I've created two new spaces, and now I'm just saying, like, did I do the right thing,
yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
should things be somewhere else?
Yeah, the way that we've defaulted to it at Mindstone is we have everyone has their chief of staff, and then we have the workspace, and within the workspace that everyone has access to, there's like subfolders within there, like the company space. Um, the way that we operate is quite open, and so we keep everything in the shared company space. Because if you think about the way I kicked off that Rebel Chat to create the linear project, I had to rely on that information to understand how to create, what is our onboarding process per se. Now, I would say that the benefit of having a different space is almost like, does anyone else need access to it? In likelihood, for many things, other teams would need access to it. So if I had a space for my personal chief of staff, that's just stuff that like I'm doing, but I'm constantly moving stuff from the personal chief of staff one to the larger shared space because I want people to see that information. So I'd say you don't necessarily need spaces to, I'd say folders within the space are probably a better way to manage things rather than spaces that are dedicated to themselves. I'd say spaces are almost like we have you could have a personal space that's like not even work related, and then you have a company space and you have your own chief of staff. I'd say like any more than that would probably have to do with some sort of information that shouldn't be shared with other individuals. Maybe you have like an executive space, or you have like you've got one customer you work with that you literally have a dedicated team that can't share information. That would be another space. So, but having access points to more information is more helpful for people to learn from you, you to learn from other people, and for Revel to get the most context that you might not have. So,
Sonia, you can have a conversation with Rebel and ask Rebel to move things that you've created and
Yeah.
and unduplicate or remove spaces as well. So actually anything you do in Rebel, you can always change it. So feel free to have a conversation and think about how you can incorporate those projects into your central space for the team, and see how you get on with that
Yeah.
workflow because it should be nice and simple.
Yeah, I guess my fear was that I guess I'm still struggling to understand the structure from Google Drives, etc., and how to work with spaces. And I use the same kind of alignment, but uh, my my thinking was this: well, if I create this folder in this particular space that is company, am I spamming a lot of people, or am I only want to create it at some particular point? But it doesn't look like that is the problem. It's a problem. So I guess I will move then, Kasia, for what we were talking about just before joining.
Let me just share my screen quickly just to kind of bring to life a bit what Harry was saying. So chief of staff, and then so I do have an external shared space with some of our Mindstone coaches. So this is a folder we've created because there's a certain group of people that need to have access to this, and it's not everyone. We don't want the coaches to see everything at Mindstone. There's things they don't need to see, but this is a separate Google Drive we've created that's shared with the coaches. Then I have a space that's general if I wanted to, and a personal one. I don't use them, and then in my work, we have Mindstone, and then we have company and solo. So within company, we have different team folders as well. So we've used that structure to help us with managing our spaces. So it could be something if you wanted to have a separate conversation around like the structure of the space, memorizing how they're set up. We can always look at that together.
Yeah.
But as I said before, you can also just have that conversation with Rebel as well, because Rebel will help you understand what's a good way to structure.
Thank you. Yes. Below.
Any other questions?
More of a comment. I actually I just discovered that automations you call a skill is a type of a skill.
I say the automation is a way to enact a skill without
Enact a
you
skill.
in
Okay.
control. Yeah. So if you have a skill, for example, you'd like a skill where Rebel at like 8 in the morning will send you an email telling you the weather. I don't know.
Yeah.
You could set up a skill for it to do that and then have an automation to essentially run that skill. So it's a
Okay.
way for you to enact ways for Rebel to work without you having to be the initiator. It almost starts the initiation up for you. So automations are still something we're kind of understanding. So if you play around with automations, you see things that maybe doesn't work in the way that you expect or that, we'd love that feedback because that's I think that sets it definitely apart from something that is semi-autonomous into something that could be more autonomous in that way. So
Yeah. I'm definitely gonna have that use case in particular for reports in issues in customer service. So as soon as the MCP is sorted, that's what we would like to do, right? Posting those reports on a weekly basis. And this is the connection with the Slack and Asana as well. So if there are
yeah,
issues, that was very useful today.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, unless anyone has any other questions, we will call it there. Thank you so much for joining. We will be
Thank you.
staying for referring back to, and enjoy being rebellious with Rebel.
I've got one last sort of more meta question about Rebel. Sometimes Rebel says that it can't do something, like, oh, you need to do this step yourself. And I'm like, oh, come on, can you do it? And often, like, there's 2 or 3 exchanges where it insists it can't, and then it figures out a way to do it. Is there a is that normal, or is there a like prompt? Is there a nice way of prompting it initially to for it to just do the thing? Like,
Is it doing it with tools that you're using or with just responding to a message?
no, it's usually with tools. Like, an example would be I wanted it to bulk change the permissions on some folders that I have. So we've done loads of customer interview recordings, interviews, and the recordings by default get saved to my private G drive. And I wanted to, and there's like, I don't know, 80 or 90 of them, and to go through them individually and share them with the rest of the company was not going to be feasible. And so I asked Rebel, can you just like, here are all the links? Could you just like change the permission settings? And Rebel replied saying like, yeah, but first you've got to do like some OAuth thing and la 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 la. And I was like, oh, really? Can you just not do it? It's like, no, you've got to do this. Here's another easier way. Still only takes 15 minutes to set up. I was like, oh, come on, please. And yeah, there was another like to and fro insisting that I had to do something. And then
Did it end up doing it?
It ended up doing it, yeah.
Okay, yeah. The one thing that I've seen, I know this may not be directly applied to it, but in the settings, there is a safety ask here, which
So I can just switch that off.
you may see. Yeah, sometimes it will pop up in a chat asking, literally saying like, allow this. You may have seen that in the demo when I had it asked for the linear side. So you can actually have it for run without asking. I would say that maybe try out the custom rules first, just so it doesn't, this is connected to everything. So some things you may want more control over, others. But you can set different like trusted tools and things like that in here. And so there's a few different settings here based on what tools you're using for that may be worth trying out. The other thing that I've found is that if you sort of plan things out, or at least direct Rebel to come up with a plan to do something rather than just do it, it can then mentally kind of structure itself to think about that rather than say, you're going to do 90 things now. It's like, hey, how would I approach having you do 90 of these things? And usually when it's able to think like a chain of thought plan like that, it then can sort of rationalize, okay, this is now what I'm going to do. So sometimes it just kind of, pauses for a moment to figure that out. So either if it's a permission thing, check out the safety side. If it's not responding, maybe just try taking a first step of having a plan out the action in more detail, and then you approving that plan. So it's almost like approving itself to do that work. That might be something to test out. So
Okay, so like almost instructing it like you're going to do these tasks, think about how you're going to do them.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a way for it to rationalize that or justify that way of working. Yeah, so that might be something to try out. So
Cool, thank you.
Great question. Great response. Thank you, everyone.
thank you all for joining.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you. Bye.
Bye.